All right, hello. You're listening to Deep Impact, episode 0 of the Educators for Impact podcast. This was recorded on July 9th, 2020. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Educators for Impact. This episode will be about people or experiences who left a deep impact on your life and significantly changed your trajectory. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle, aka MLR. I'm a middle school teacher in the Bronx. I've taught social studies and ELA at the middle and high school level in 8 different schools across 3 different states. And now you're going to hear the voice of the magnificent Kalinda Jones.
AKA Dr. Jones, and I'm a professor at community college here in Sacramento, California, and I currently teach social work classes, applied psychology courses. Part of my teaching is at a men's maximum security state prison, and in the past, I have taught middle school, high school science classes, as well as counseling at the graduate school level.
Awesome. That's a lot of credentials, Dr. Jones.
Yeah. No, just call me Kalinda, okay?
All right, cool. All right, K Jones. Kalinda. Before we jump into our deep impact episode, let's talk just a teeny bit about how we know each other. Who am I to you? And I'll share who you are to me.
So I know Michelle since she was, like she likes to say, a skinny teenager. That's your thing, not mine. I don't remember you that way.
True.
Since you were in my 10th grade bio class?
9th grade
Bio class.
It was science.
It was general science.
General science.
I really remember the 11th grade class when you took me for English. So that was going back a couple years.
Yeah. True.
And so what year was that? You graduated in?
I graduated in 2004. So that must have been the 2001 school year.
Yeah. So here we are 20 years later.
20 years later. Wow. Yeah, so I was just a skinny kid in your class. Well, I remember the first day of your class, you made us introduce ourselves as a candy bar or something like that. And I was like, okay, she's different, and that's okay. And I remember thinking like, wow, this lady is strange. It's the first day of school. Like, let's get to the work. But I thought that was really cool. So who is Kalinda Jones to me? She's my teacher, one of my favorite teachers from high school, mentor, a big sister, and definitely just an educator who believes in seeing the whole child from day one and nurturing the whole child. So it's a pleasure to still be working with you 20 years later. This is crazy. It's like our 20-year anniversary of knowing each other.
So let me say what this means to me, because you did that, and then we'll transition into our first topic. Yeah.
All right, cool.
So it is very rare in a teaching career. I've been teaching since 1994. It is very rare to be able to connect with your students again as adults. And it is a pleasure to move from having a student to having really a true collaborative, personal and professional connection to someone. So for me, this is like an honor that I think every teacher kind of secretly hopes will happen, but often does not happen. So this is really, I mean, to use a Christian worldview language, it's really, truly a blessing that I don't think I would have, I expected. I didn't expect it. So it's a bonus.
Oh, I agree. It's a big part of it is probably because you have the same number. You've had the same number all these years. So whenever I needed you, it was like, oh, I know I have her number somewhere, so. Shout out to you for paying your phone bill for 20 years and keeping your stuff connected. So let's jump into our topic for this episode is all about having a deep impact, or like what a deep impact means, right? And so we agreed that we were thinking about a deep impact. It's an impact that happens, that allows you to kind of get stopped in your track and change directions. And like you trying to basically go from like going this way, and then I was like, ah! And then it's like, oh wait, I need to go another direction. So, for our podcast, we're focusing on educators and how we could continue to make impacts, or even partner with other educators to make impacts, but just something that's going to hit home with students, with families, with all the stakeholders in education, to make them change the trajectory of the way in which they deal with children, adults, and whoever's in front of them. So I'm going to personally talk about my experience with a educator who had a deep impact on my trajectory, who kind of stopped me in my tracks and was like, yo, you can become more, you can do more. And the educator is none other than, and of course, Kalinda knows this person as well, is Shannon Smith, my 9th grade science teacher and high school class sponsor. And for those of you who don't know about class sponsorship, something they used to do back in the day, I don't know if they do it anymore, where a teacher sponsors a class and kind of like mentors that class and is with that class throughout their entire experience in high school. That was the first time that he did that. That was the only time that he did that. We were literally his kids, and he treated us as such. So I'm going to talk about a memory that I have with this person. When I first walked into his classroom, first of all, his classroom was not decorated. So I was like, this guy is broke, or I don't know what's going on. Maybe they took out of teaching supplies, because it was very bare bones. And, you know, he just started talking to us in a very like welcoming and sincere voice. And I'm thinking, like, most teachers, they start with like, these are my rules. This is the way it's going to be in here. And he's just like, hi, everyone, welcome. And he called us by our last name, Miss Randall, you know. And I was like, Michelle? He's like, no, Miss Randall. And so he's trying to getting us ready for that professional environment without us even knowing it. And I just remember leaving his classroom that first day with a smile. Like, I'm gonna like this teacher, I'm gonna like this class. So that was my first memory of this guy. And he had like a little, you know, plaid, like he always wore like short, like dress button downs, but like with the sleeves. Like, I'm like, where's the rest of your shirt? Like, he always wore the ones with like the sleeves cut. But that was him. And, you know, he was our sponsor, and he was just like, you know, very open, I felt like, from the beginning. So I like that about him. A pivotal moment with him, when it was like an impact, I was like, was when he kicked me off the student council for, you know, for not doing my job, basically. So I was the vice president of our class, and I wasn't going to meetings, and I wasn't doing any of the work. And he just called me into the classroom and just said, hey, you have been given this role. You haven't been keeping up your end of the bargain. You're out. And I'm just like, okay, but I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, can I get a second chance? He's like, nah, like, that's it. You know, this is life. Like, if you don't hold up your end of the bargain, if you don't do the hard work, you don't get to have your seat, you know? And so I was like, dang, you know, like, I didn't like it at the moment, but I respected it, because it taught me, like, you cannot just say you're going to do something and not mean it, right? Your words and your actions have to line up. And so that was like my first lesson of integrity that I got from a teacher that really showed me that it's time for you. If you're going to step up and say you're going to do something, then you better do it, or you're going to lose that opportunity. You're going to lose that position. So shout out to Shannon for that. And then just some advice that he gave me that I can still see in my mind. I can still see this scene from high school. And I remember bragging. I was in your classroom, Kalinda, and you were in the back room, and he was in his classroom, and you guys were kind of back there.
Our classes were next door to each other with a science lab, like a science storage room beside them.
Yeah, so like a little storage room that y'all use as y'all little like secret hideaway. Like, it was so cool in there. You never let anyone go in there. You had a fridge in there, a microwave in there. It was good life. It was good life in there. All right. For high school, it was like, man, I want to go in the back room. Let me go in the back room.
There were also dead frogs back there. And
yeah, I mean, it was old poster boards, but y'all made it work. So it was cool. It was really, it was like the design of the classroom and like having that space was like really cool. Anyway, So they were, Shannon comes out of the back room or the portal, uh, and I was bragging. I was like, I'm this, I'm that. I was very cocky in high school, especially like my junior, senior year. I had a lot of friends, and I had a lot of siblings and cousins that went to the school. So I was bragging like, yo, everybody likes me, everybody follows me. And then he comes out of the room and says, well, with leadership comes great responsibility. So if you're going to lead people, where are you taking them? Or you better know where you're taking them. And I was like, oh, my little 17-year-old brain was like, I wasn't leading people in a good direction then. I was leading a lot of like negative things at the school, and I no longer wanted to be a part of that. After that quote and that conversation, it was like, okay, now I have to really think about where am I leading people. With a gift like leadership, it has to be used wisely. And so that allowed me to really think deeply about who I wanted to become. And was I going to be a leader that would stand out for leading people in a direction of hope, understanding, clarity, peace, love, or was I going to be a leader who would just lead people in the wrong direction and then abandon them once they've started going down that road? Because that's what most leaders do when they lead people that way. So yeah, I needed that. And so the trajectory went from like being a cocky, know-it-all to being like in the National Honor Society, started to fundraise and do all these positive things with my leadership that I don't think I would have did without his help. So to you, Shannon Smith, thank you for kicking me off the freaking student council board. But also thank you for just like seeing me, knowing me, and understanding that I could become the leader that I'm still striving to be today, but it's because of your impact that I've gotten this far. So thank you. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and segue into Kalinda's perspective about, something that had a deep impact in her life. And she's gonna focus more on an experience. I know I focus on a person, but she's gonna talk about an experience. So
well, I'm going to talk about two experiences. One will be quick at the end. The first one is an experience that is about a person. So it's about a student. And when we were planning for this and we were talking about like, what are the things that have happened in your life as an educator or as a student that like really changed your trajectory? You might call it transformative learning, right? I immediately thought of what I think is one of the most pivotal things that happened in my K-12 teaching experience, something I don't think we talk about often. And I just want to be clear that this has, there is the death of a student in this. That's actually kind of the whole frame of this. And I don't think we talk enough about how this affects us as educators interpersonally and intrapersonally, so inside of ourselves. So I want to talk about Earl Lemons. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us. And I want to tell you kind of about the story that happened for me as an educator. I'd been teaching high school for probably about 4 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I get a call at home on a Sunday night that says, come to school early, like a half an hour early. You got to meet in this room and all the staff is going to be there. And I was like, what is going on? So we get there and no one really knows what's going on. And so there's that heightened like buzz in the room where all the teachers are in this one place, and we never go to this place together. It's not like where we have staff rooms. It's not like that at all. We're in there. And in this room, it's where they actually have the board meetings. When the board meetings are at the high school, it's across, it's like kitty corner from my class.
I remember that room. I had orange chairs in that room.
Yeah, it was like it was weird. Like we didn't even know where to sit because we never were in there, right? So it was weird.
Nobody was ever in there. Yeah.
It was super strange. And so we get in there and we're like, wow, this must be really important. And then I couldn't even tell you who it was. I couldn't even tell you how it got said. All I know is that what was said was that there was a shooting in the neighborhood the night before and Earl was shot and killed. And from that moment on, for the rest of the day, I walked to my classroom in emotional daze. I had first hour planning. I have no idea what I did first hour. I couldn't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of emotional heightenedness in the building. You could feel that buzz in the building, but I was just dazed. So I didn't say anything. I went through my day. I didn't say anything. And then the last hour of the day was the hour that Earl was in. The thing about Earl is that this was his third time taking my bio class. So the other 2 times he didn't finish the school year in the school. He was like, I guess, went to alternative school. Sometimes, students disappear. You don't know what happens. But this time he was about his business. And I felt like I didn't know a lot of his backstory. I didn't know any of that. All I know is that he was coming to class. He was doing his work. He was passing. And I felt super proud of him. So it begins. I haven't said anything all day. Last hour of the day starts. That's the class he was in. And so I said, you know what? People have been talking a lot of stuff today, because there was a lot of trash talking going on as well around this. And I said, but I have some things that I want to say. And I just, said some respectful things about him that I authentically felt. And then I started crying. And then I was like, I cannot stay in this classroom. So I found like a person in the hallway who came in and saw like a hall monitor person who came into my class, and I went to the counseling office. That's a whole different story about what counselors should not do. But what the end result of that was a lot of emotional upheaval. So I'm in the counselor's office and I get a call from the main office, and I'm like, I left the students I'm really emotional. Like I'm crying, and people are not doing a good job meeting me where I am emotionally. And I'm like, I shouldn't be in trouble. I left the students with somebody. Right. So I get down to the main office.
Wait, time out. You're like real time grieving the student, and the main office calls you?
They found me in the counseling office and called the counseling office secretary and said, hey, Miss Jones, you got to go down to the main office. They need you. Didn't tell me why.
Okay. I'm like, okay.
Right. So immediately I think I'm in trouble, because I never been called to the main office. Well, except for when I was in trouble a couple times. Right.
True.
Right.
True.
So I get down there, and this is what the secretary says to me. She says, we need you to talk to the newspaper, because no one in the building can say anything good about him except for you. So we'll just bookmark that and come back to that at a later date. That's not really the point of this experience, but it is important. Okay. So what happened after that is that I was in an emotional haze for quite a few days, and probably longer than a week. And what happened was the students in my class, somehow they could see this. And I remember they would be like, hey, why don't you go to the neighborhood? There's a tree, put something at the tree. Hey, why don't you come to the funeral? And I really felt like students were a little bit further than me in the grieving process, a little bit more experienced about this, and that they took my hand and led me through this. What I didn't know at the time was that an emotional wall was being torn down inside of me. And then on the other side of that, I would never be the same educator I was again. Because I apparently had this real inauthentic personal or like teacher persona. I didn't know that. I really didn't know it. I was just in there acting like a teacher, I guess. But things changed. I learned that the personal is professional. These two things are not separated. It doesn't mean that you're the same person hanging out with your friends as you are, but you can't like be one person in the classroom and another person outside of the classroom. I learned the importance of authenticity. And I learned that what we do is inherently relational, and that relational stuff goes both ways.
Absolutely.
And I think that was, I think, one of the most foundational things that put me on a very different trajectory in how I understand my role as an educator.
So when you're speaking about the trajectory, the path that you were on was a path of inauthenticity, of a persona that you thought, well, probably teacher prep programs probably helped with that persona, right?
Yep. You can't be friends with them. Not that it ever was friends, but right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I feel like for my teacher prep program, it was a lot of like control, compliance, content. the 3 C's, right? And I don't know, I don't, but when we're thinking about the trajectory, like you decided to shed that and become or walk on a new path, right? And so that new path, just tell me 3 things from that new path that you were like, you know what, this is the trajectory that I'm on now. I heard one of them was relational.
Mm-hmm. Let me say one thing about it is that I don't know if I made a decision. I think it was a little bit more powerful than that.
Got it.
So
Wait, sit with that though. It was more powerful than that. What does that mean?
I think there was something sacred or spiritual or something about it that
Got
like I wasn't the same person after that happened.
Got it.
I just wasn't. And this is when we said like learning from an experience, what I think learning from experience with students, right?
Absolutely.
And so I learned that this relational component, this authentic component, right? That what we do is relational, that what we do comes out of an authentic place in us.
Absolutely.
And I learned that this false dichotomy between the personal and professional, it's not, and that's a whole longer discussion about like, that doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries and that you don't, act appropriate. That's not what I'm saying. But this idea that you can leave your personal self at the door is like unrealistic. And actually, if we wanted to talk about it through the lens of race, it's actually rooted in some white supremacist ideas, right? I couldn't have said that then, but I can say that now, which is a good transition actually into the one other experience I wanted to talk about real quickly.
Absolutely.
So when I was also sometime around this, I was in my graduate program and I took a multicultural counseling course. And this was the first time as a white woman who'd been teaching 4 or 5 years that I heard the words privilege, racism, classism. Now, I'm sure I had heard them before, but I didn't have to sit with them, think about them, learn about them. Mm-hmm. And my response as a white person was different than what I've noted in many of my white peers, is I was like, oh, that's what I've been seeing.
Bro, so
you know what I mean? It wasn't like I didn't have the white guilt experience. I just was like, now I got the words to understand what I've been seeing.
Got it.
I also left that class, and this is the experience of a class. I left that class deeply committed to understanding myself as a white person, as a cultural being, working in cross-cultural settings. Like that was a commitment I made. The other thing that I learned when I think about this is that really it's inexcusable that I was in the classroom for, I could look back at my transcript and tell you when I took this class, but it's inexcusable that I was in the classroom for 5 years as a teacher without this knowledge. Because I was seeing it, I could label the things I had experienced and saw students experience. Once I got the words, I could label it, but it's inexcusable that I was that ignorant during that time. So I learned the power of words to help us understand experiences and navigate experiences, especially issues of race. And I also want to say that I also learned that what these words often help us do is make the implicit, the stuff that's just happening that sometimes we can't remove from the fog, it makes it explicit. And then we can actually proactively do something about it, right? So that's the second experience that I wanted to talk about. It's important to me that I talk about that because I think that we've been talking about having this podcast for a minute, and I think it's really important in this time in history. Yeah, we acknowledge what we have failed to do since slavery, which is really address white supremacy in schools, really address racism in schools, and the intersection of so many white females who come into this profession ignorant with white savior complexes, whatever, that aren't required at any level to interrogate that, right? And I think that's important as we embed race in our conversations. It has to be a part of what we do because you can't look at any kind of impact you're going to make in America and it be authentic to the lives of students' true identity. You cannot look at that in any authentic way and make it anything other than assimilation if you not understand the way that racism are playing, the way that class is playing, even the way that gender, homophobia, how transphobia, how these things are interplaying in what's going on in what we do in the classroom.
Drops mic.
No,
yo, mic drop. Like, talk about it. Wow. So thank you for sharing those experiences. I mean, I think from what we've talked about so far, I talked about teacher experience, right? Experience I had with a teacher. Then you talked about experience you had with a student and a classroom. And so all three of those create our school system, basically.
Yeah.
Student, classrooms, teachers.
Good point.
They all have an impact on the way in which we exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talked about the trajectory in regards to race, class, white supremacy, particularly, that's the wall we have to beat up against and change the trajectory.
Yes.
And so when we talk about educators for impact, we are asking educators to join us in this movement to hit this wall, acknowledge that it's a wall, it's there, and change the trajectory for our children and their children and their children, so that this can no longer be. This way of being, this way of accepting one way as the right way is over. Mm-hmm. And so we really want to thank you for hanging out with us today and being a part of our Educators for Impact episode 0. And let us know like what experiences have had a deep impact on you. And let us know like what other things you want to talk about as far as like what this coalition, this collaboration, like what this space can be for you as an educator or as a parent, as a counselor, whoever you are. We want to hear from you. This is a year that has been difficult for everyone, and we want to acknowledge that during our next episode. So with that being said, we would like to invite you to become a member of our Educators for Impact Facebook group. So you can find us and, check out what we have, our post on there. You can find us on Educators for Impact on Instagram as well. And then on Twitter, it's edu4impact. So you can check out our post there as well. So for our next episode, we'll be discussing enduring essentials for educators. So we'll be talking about things that will be here, that have existed in the past, and that will carry you beyond our current situation of the COVID-19 pandemic. But to check out that episode, you'll have to come back. So we hope that you enjoyed. We hope that you come back, and we hope that you are an educator who is ready to make an impact. Thank you for your time. K Jones, you wanna?
No, you got it.
I got that. I killed that. All right, let's go. Thank you for listening, and have a great day. Peace.